Coming up, the Boston Celtics dominate the Kings and the Cavs close in on a playoff spot. This is Locked On Game to Game NBA.
Every game, every team, every angle. Locked On Game to Game, your team every day.
Welcome in. You're listening to Locked On Game to Game NBA. Local experts joining us to go over the biggest stories on the hardwood. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you so much for making Locked On your first listen every single weekday. The Boston Celtics went into Sacramento last night. They dominated the Kings from start to finish. Locked On Celtics has more after a stress-free win for Boston.
Boston Celtics finally get that blowout win we've been waiting for. I'm John Corrales of the Locked On Celtics podcast. Yeah, the Kings were on their fifth game in 7 nights, and they're not a great defensive team to begin with, but the Celtics did what they're supposed to do by attacking the rim, forcing that defense to make decisions, and then having the entire offense flow off of that. They got drive and kick 3-pointers rather than the one pass 3-pointers. They got themselves to the free throw line, even though they didn't make a ton of them. They did everything they're supposed to do. This is what the offense is supposed to look like, and we've been dying for this level of offense from the Celtics. But the defense as well. They forced 6 turnovers from Domantas Sabonis, jumping the passing lanes, understanding how he plays, reading the scouting report, and getting those turnovers and turning them into points. The Celtics 21 points off of turnovers compared to Sacramento's 6. They ended the road trip in style. This is exactly what Celtics fans have been hoping for. Now, can they continue? They still have an outside chance at that top seed and a couple of very winnable games on the schedule before facing the Bucks.
The Orlando Magic continue to grow up before our eyes, closing things out in a tight game to get the win over Washington yesterday. Locked On Wizards breaks down that loss. Locked On Magic, happy to see the growth of this young Orlando team.
What's up, everybody? It's boy Brandon Scott again from Locked On Wizards. The Washington Wizards again lose a must-win and a very winnable game, losing to the Orlando Magic in Orlando 122-112. And yes, Kristaps Porzingis did drop 30 points and he shot 12 for 22 from the field. But how did we lose this game? Well, 2 big reasons. Number one, defense. We allowed Orlando Magic to shoot 53.8% from the field, 44.4% for 3 points. So our inability to protect the perimeter cost us again. And 2, we lost the battle of the paint. They out-rebounded us 42-33 and offensive rebounds 7-4. So again, you can really argue that protecting the paint and the perimeter are the 2 biggest aspects of defense, and we failed at both tonight, and it continues to be an issue for this team. Now, we continue to slide down the standings and out of the play-in, and so next game, we're looking at Denver at home. So we'll try to get back in the win column tomorrow night against the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. So, again, appreciate everybody, and everybody have a blessed evening. Peace.
This is Philip Rossman-Reich, the host of Locked On Magic, as the Orlando Magic get a huge win, 122-112, over the Washington Wizards. And it's huge because of the way that they did it, not necessarily because of the standings implications with the postseason dreams slowly getting out of reach as we get closer and closer to the end of the season. But so many of the games that the Magic have played over the last few weeks, over the last few months, over the last few days, has been all about their late game execution. We've questioned whether this young team can make plays down the stretch consistently to win games. And if you look at their record, just like you could look at the Wizards' record, they're playing late games, they're playing clutch situations, is really what's determining their outcomes and why they're where they're at in the standings. With the lead heading into the final moments of the game, Orlando made every play they had to make. They got stops, they got rebounds, but most importantly, they made shots, whether it was moving the ball to get Gary Harris an open 3, whether it was Markelle Fultz working the post. They found a way to get shots and pull out what is a big win over a Wizards team that needed it just as much as they did. A big win for Orlando to start this homestand.
The Nets dive down the standings in the East continues as they fall to Cleveland last night. Locked On Nets checking in about the many issues Brooklyn had last night. Locked On Cavs happy that they keep racking up wins on their way to the postseason.
Doug Norrie, Locked On Nets, coming at you following yet another Brooklyn Nets loss as they hurtle toward the play-in game in the Eastern Conference. This was going to be a critical 3-game stretch for the team playing the Cavs back-to-back, and then the Miami Heat, who they're duking it out with for that 6th and 7th spot. They were not able to hold back Cleveland. Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland sort of got whatever they wanted through stretches of this game. Nets made a valiant comeback near the end, but it was definitely too little, too late for a team that continues to struggle from beyond the three-point line and just struggled to score in general. We're going to be talking about the game, the Nets' recent struggles, what to expect going forward, all of that and more over at Locked On.
How's it going, everyone? Evan Damrell here, co-host of Locked On Cavs, the Locked On Now takeaway after Cleveland's Tuesday night win in Brooklyn, New York against the Nets. Well, with this win, Cleveland is 3 wins away from clinching their first playoff berth in nearly a half decade, and for the first time without LeBron James since the 97-98 NBA season. Jared Allen gave Donovan Mitchell's dunk, which, if you haven't seen it yet, I don't know if you're on social media or not, 9.7 out of 10, and to be frank, it was the catalyst alongside Jetty Osman and Karis LeVert hitting plenty of three-pointers off the bench and giving the Cavs exactly what they need in terms of bench production. Hear about this and more from my co-host Chris Manning when he goes solo on Wednesday's Locked On Cavs as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
That will do it for this edition of Locked On Game to Game NBA. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every single weekday. Make sure that you subscribe to both Locked On NBA and your favorite team's Locked On podcast on YouTube and wherever else you get your podcasts from. I'm Kainani Stevens. This has been Locked On Game to Game.